Hello, YouTube. Apkallu, half human, half fish, or the contribution of Mesopotamia to the ideas of paleocontact or ancient aliens. Apkallu are hybrid half human, half fish creatures. In Mesopotamian mythology, these are the 7 wise men who, in the pre-deluge times, passed on science, arts, and crafts to humans. The Babylonian historian of the 3rd century before Common Era, Berosus, as he is best known in the contemporary West, told us that initially people on Earth lived as savages, having no laws and ideas about intelligence. Civilization was brought to them by one of the wise men, Apkallu, half man, half fish, named Oannes. In the first year, a beast came out of the sea near Babylonia, a beast named Oannes. It had the body of a fish, but there was a human head growing from under a fish's head and human legs growing out of the fish's tail. He had a human voice. His image has been preserved to this day. And the people of Mesopotamia considered him as a driving factor in their history. They liked the idea of a divine revelation, and the Apkallu became its intermediaries. And of course, this idea was liked not only by residents of Mesopotamia. We're speaking about the paleocontact, the theory that extraterrestrial beings once brought knowledge to people, which nowadays you can find in a number of studies. You can see the new Assyrian bas-relief from Nimrud from the Ashur-Nazi-Rapal Palace. That would be from the years 883 to 859 before Common Era, with the image of Apkallu. According to Mesopotamian mythology or beliefs, however you look at it, Apkallu received wisdom from the god Ea. In the Sumerian version, that would be Enki, who very often acted as an active or passive mediator of human intelligence in various myths. The Apkallu gave man wisdom and taking advantage of the worldwide deluge, which in Mesopotamian mythology acted as the boundary between the mythical and historical periods, returned to the fresh waters of the Apsu world ocean. According to a later legend told in the Epic of Erra, the god Marduk sends Apkallu to Apsa, using their skills to repair his statue, battered by the deluge. Hybrid creatures are one of the favorite themes of myth-making, if we believe those were myths. I'm sure some scientists do, but people are free to do their own research. So half human, half fish, according to some myths of Mesopotamia, played a decisive role in the transition of man from a natural wild state to a civilized one. They transferred to mankind the technologies and knowledge that formed the basis of human society and allowed man to realize himself or herself as a rational being. I just want to add one quick note. In the Russian far north, on those big rivers, there was a tradition of skinning the huge local fish, especially processing them and sewing them into something like the one you can see on the Mesopotamian statues, like a waterproof raincoat. The skin was thick and big. The fish was 2 meters long. There is still gigantic fish like that, and I have a video about recent catches. This craft actually flourished literally until the 19th century. But let's get into history now. The Babylonian history, or Babyloniaca, of Berosus is dedicated to the Seleucid king Antiochus I Soter, who ruled from 281 to 261 before Common Era. According to the Christian author Tatian, who died about 120 of Common Era, the Babyloniaca was published in the Antiochus' third year of reign, 278 before Common Era. The same author states that Berosus was born during the reign of the Macedonian conqueror Alexander the Great, who held court in Babylon in the spring of the year 323. Berosus, who is called Berosus in cuneiform documents, was a very important official. He was Shatamu, head of the temple organization, between the years 258 and 253 before Common Era. This office gave him access to the archives of Esagila, the temple of the Babylonian supreme god Marduk. Using cuneiform texts like the Babylonian Chronicles, his project too, I'm sure, he wrote his 3 books of this Babylonian history. But unfortunately, they're known only from quotations by later authors, for example, Joseph Flavius or Flavius Josephus. I will elaborate a little bit later. So, we could reconstruct the Babylonian history. After some topographical remarks, Berosus told us first how a mysterious creature called Oannes, half fish, half man, came from the sea and showed mankind writing, farming, and the arts. The first book also contained a description of the epic struggle between the gods, culminating in the victory of Marduk. In the second book, 10 legendary kings are mentioned that have ruled before the great flood or the deluge. The deluge itself was the climax of the second book. After this story, Berosus treated several kings and sages until he reached the reign of the one known as Nabonassar. There's another name too, more common in the Western world. The years would be 747 to 734. The final book is the only one that may be called historical, probably in our sense of the word. Several Assyrian, Babylonian, and Achaemenid rulers were mentioned, all from a Babylonian perspective. The death of Alexander the Great on June 11, 323, before Common Era, seems to have been the last event mentioned by Berosus. Berosus, he wrote in the style of chronicles. He challenged the Greek views on the history of the East. The authenticity of Book 3 as a source was confirmed by cuneiform inscriptions. Berosus founded an astrological school on the island of Kos and thus introduced Greeks to Babylonian astrology. So, several Greek and Roman authors, for example, Pliny the Elder, state that Berosus founded that school of astrology on the Greek island Kos and received a statue in Athens. Babyloniaca is a text written in Greek, and the Babylonian priest and historian Berosus in the 3rd century before Common Era is the one they point out to. Despite the fact that the work is lost, it has been preserved in significant fragments by subsequent authors, especially in the works of the Christian author and bishop of the 4th century Common Era, Eusebius of Caesarea, and was known to a limited extent in scientific circles as early as late antiquity. Perosi Chaldeorum Historia Quae Supersunt, a collection of surviving excerpts from Berosus' work, was published in Leipzig in the year 1825. They are more fully described, I understand, in Fragmenta Historicorum Graecorum, the Paris edition of the year 1848. Published for the first time in Rome in 1498 by Eusebius Silber in Latin, then often reprinted Antiquatum Libri Quinque cum Commentaries Joannuis Anni, does not belong to Berosus, as one might conclude from the named work, but is a crude forgery, as I read, by the Dominican friar Giovanni Nani from Viterbo. Significant parts, including one devoted to the reign of this Nabonasir or Nebuchadnezzar II, are also preserved in the works of the Jewish historian Josephus, especially in his Jewish Antiquities and Against Apion. This Babyloniaca was summarized in the 1st century before Common Era by a scholar named Alexander Polyhistor. This excerpt was used by Flavius Josephus and the church father Eusebius, I mentioned before, from Caesarea. Berosus, in the first book of Babylonian history, says that he lived in the time of Alexander, the son of Philip, that the books of many writers, covering a period of more than 15 myriad, are kept with great care in Babylon. They contain records of stories about the sky and the sea, and about the first creations, and about kings, and about their deeds. So, for several thousands of years, the name of the semi-legendary Sumerian priest Berosus has been known. And in the Soviet Union, it was familiar to us thanks to the novel by Boleslav Prus titled Pharaoh. Also, two Soviet writers, Yemtsev and Parnov, came closer to the canonical and legendary retelling in their book titled Shreds of Darkness and the Needle of Time. However, having been published back in 1970, this book was soon, as they say, put under the knife of the censorship. Therefore, it's not superfluous to recall the following episode. And this, by the way, is a very interesting depiction from the book of a Ukrainian historian and somebody who was very much interested in the theory of paleocontact and mysteries of history, Alexander Kulsky. Let me first start by defining something. Hierophant, a person, especially a priest in ancient Greece, who interprets sacred mysteries or esoteric principles, but not only in Greece. So let's begin. Without hierophants, issues that concerned vital interests of the country, such as the Great War, could not be resolved. Therefore, having received a proposal from Assyria to finally resolve the territorial and border issues without a major war, the hierophants of Kemi, or Takem, ancient Egypt, agreed to this, although Paro, the pharaoh, wanted war. Since the king of Assyria made his proposal as if on behalf of the priests of Babylon, the hierophants agreed to this on the condition that the great Berosus himself would walk to them. The fact is that the hierophants also wanted this war. That is why the priests of Kemi demanded that the meeting take place under the following conditions. Firstly, Berosus will come to them alone, and secondly, there will be no solemn ceremony. The hierophants will be waiting for him at the appointed time in one of the remote secret dungeons of the temple. If the Chaldean magician does not arrive on time, it can be regarded as the fact that he changed his mind and therefore showed disrespect to the highest college of priests of Kemi. Well then, there'll be a merciless war. Berosus fulfilled the conditions. In the dead of night, having overcome the towering walls, Berosus found himself in a protected inner park, where no one was walking because with his inner vision, he saw a door several hundred kilometers away, which was located in this park. By the way, it was the only door that led to the very secret hideout where the silent hierophants were already waiting for him. Yes, indeed, no one was walking in this park, because it was rather not a park, but a huge, deadly serpentarium. The most venomous snakes, ferocious deadly spiders, and nimble, hideous centipedes have always been the masters here. Berosus walked past them calmly, unhurriedly, and all these evil spirits crawled away from him in horror. Although Berosus generally did not pay attention to them, he quickly crossed the park, found the secret door, guessed the secret of its mechanism, and without wasting time, closed the door behind him, but from the inside. There he brought the younger priests into a somnambulistic state, and they were waiting for him armed with secret priestly weapons. A few minutes later, he was calmly talking to the hierophants about business, addressing each of them by name, although they had never met him before. From that moment on, Berosus was considered a respected brother of the highest college of hierophants. His word meant a lot. Naturally, there was no war this time. At the end of the meeting, Berosus made a number of prophecies. They were carefully written down by priests present there, and they have been coming true regularly for several thousand years. It was a very interesting book, and I'm sure the authors had knowledge that we may not be privy to. Let me add this. The Sumerian writing, as it is now known, appeared in southern Mesopotamia at the end of the 9th millennium before Common Era. After all, it was in Sumerian writing as one of the most famous Sumerologists, somebody who studies ancient Sumer, Anatoly Kifishin recalls that the most ancient encyclopedia of mankind, Abkalu, was written, which reflects the worldview of people from the 10th to the 6th millennia before Common Era, and even more. When studying the laws of the internal development of the Sumerian pictography, it turned out that at the end of the 4th millennium before Common Era, the writing system of the Sumerians was not in the formative stage, but in the stage of disintegration. This is what Alexander Kursky wanted us to know and understand. So, that history may be even more ancient than we know. But I wanted to speak about this very interesting legend of this givers of the knowledge, the Apkallu, and what they gave to the ancient inhabitants of Mesopotamia. I've spoken about ancient China and the givers of knowledge, like the Yellow Emperor in that country. You can find that video in my channel. I'll continue to bring forth information like this. We don't have a lot, we have scant knowledge, but I'm sure with the advancement of archaeology and using satellites to aid the archaeologists, we will find out more. And if you're interested about the available history of the underwater beings, advanced beings, you can find a lot in my channel. I want to thank you for your attention to my work. And if you like my research, you can help me through the links you will find in the description to this video. Please like my videos and subscribe to my channel and make sure you're notified. Thank you.